Here's a question I've been asking. Are they keeping our young people safe, or are they promoting drug use? That's a good question to ask of the New South Wales government after it announced and gave advance notice that pill testing will be conducted and trialled at the Wollongong Music Festival in March. Now, the Health Minister, Ryan Park, announced that the government would provide free testing of illicit drugs at the Yaws and Owls Festival on March 1st. It's the first time pill testing will be offered in New South Wales. The government will decide next year whether or not to make it permanent. Now, we've heard the arguments before because the Victorian government has been through this process. On the one hand, they argue that young people are going to take drugs anyway, so we might as well test them to make sure that the dangerous drugs are not completely dangerous before they take them. On the other hand, if we're going to say that drugs are illegal, how can we then say the state will test your illegal drugs to make sure they're not dangerous before handing you back your illegal drugs so you can illegally take them? It doesn't really make sense, does it? What strikes me about this event in New South Wales is that the New South Wales state government is effectively advertising, giving advance notice. If you go to the Yaws and Owls Music Festival in Wollongong on March 1st, there'll be pill testing, which means police will have been instructed to turn a blind eye to people with drugs, because how else will trust be built for the young people to go to the pill testing centre? Now, this has been trialled in Victoria, the most recent trial in the last week of December. They tested 600 pills, mostly cocaine, MDMA and ketamine, and they found no highly dangerous substances. So that's at least 600 illegal pills that were tested and then handed back to young people so they could take them as police turned a blind eye. They said it was a resounding success, and here was their proof. They said because 40% of the young people at the pill testing centre told officials they would probably use less drugs in the future. Well, of course they're going to say that, aren't they? And that's despite the fact that one person overdosed on the first day of the pill testing regime. I think that this is simply advertising to young people. If you want to take illicit drugs at a music festival, I tell you, there's one in Wollongong on March the 1st. Police will be going easy because pill testing will be available. Isn't this encouraging drugs, Lucy?
It's normalising drug use. Come one, come all. Here's the perfect destination for you to avoid taking dodgy drugs from your dealer who you just met on the street corner one night and decided, hey, this is going to be a perfect score for me. Cheap drugs, and I can get them tested and make sure that I can get away from this safely. There are so many myths and so much propaganda when it comes to this. You know, they're arguing effectively that, number one, this came from the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. They came out a year ago and said that pill testing could have prevented 64 festival deaths. How do we know that for sure when not only are the tests inaccurate themselves, right? They're not actually able to identify all of the strains of chemicals that are being tested in this instance, but how can they prove that? To me, that sounds like propaganda. You know what would prevent 64 festival deaths and overdoses? Don't take illegal drugs. Don't do it. And what we're effectively saying to these youths is, come on, we've got a safe environment for you where we can test them and we can normalise drug use, but once you leave this area, there's the double standard. Once you leave this area, if we catch you with these drugs, they are effectively illegal and we're going to lock you up for it, or we're going to charge you with some kind of offence. It's outrageous.
Well, I think we need to talk about what the real problem here is, and that is that the music at these festivals is so bad that they have to take drugs in order to be able to cope with it.
Have you ever been? Have you ever been to a
festival? Look, I'm going to break your heart here. No, I've never been to one. Funny about that, isn't it?
If you listen to the songs, clearly the musicians were on drugs when they wrote.
Correct. It all makes sense, right? But I've always wondered how this actually works, because you have the Premier standing up and saying, you know, illegal drugs are still illegal in New South Wales. Everyone else says illegal drugs are still illegal in New South Wales. But you're saying there's a place where you can take your drugs, and presumably you are taking to have your drugs tested on the basis that you're not going to be arrested for doing so. Otherwise, who the hell would take their drugs to be tested? I mean, it's basically saying, copper, go over there, that's where you go and arrest the people, right? So they've said there will be a quote-unquote amnesty zone at the site of the testing and around the site of the testing. So you have effectively created a place in New South Wales on this particular weekend in Wollongong where illegal drugs are legal, because presumably the police have agreed that they will not be arresting anyone in that particular zone. So that 10 square metres or 20 square metres or whatever it is, whatever that square footage is that they're taking up for this pill testing venue is effectively a place where illegal drugs are legal. So they're not actually illegal drugs anymore if you're standing on that piece of land.
And
so how does the law stand?
But how many of them are actually also going to this festival for the music now? Right? Because that's, to me, it's kind of defeating the purpose. It's like, oh, well, this is a music festival. If you're going to come, bring your drugs. But how many young kids out there who, by the way, shouldn't be taking these drugs in the first place, how many of them are going to say, hey, let's just use this as an excuse to go there and to have them tested and it be in a safe environment where we know that, yeah, we're going to get some counsellor that will come over and tell us, hey, don't take the drugs. It's not good for you, but go and take them. The thing I took the greatest issue with was when they said in the statement, people will never be advised that a drug is safe to use. Oh, but come and let us test it for you and then confirm, yes, it is safe to use. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy and the idiocy of it all. It's ridiculous.
Well, here's an example of the mixed messages, right? So the event organiser put out a statement on Instagram and said, I quote, "We have a zero tolerance policy towards illegal drugs." Then, in the next breath, said, "However, we see an abstinence-only approach as unhelpful, so you won't be judged and you won't get into trouble." Well, how can you have a zero-tolerance approach if you're saying, however, abstinence is unhelpful, we won't judge you if you're taking drugs,
zero tolerance, zero tolerance except inside this tent.
They wonder why we've got confused young people.
Where the coppers won't come for you. And
I mean, I have to take drugs to understand the policy.
I know, and the music and the whole lot. And I bang this drum all the time about tobacco, as I was doing last night, but it's the same with alcohol. A lot of the reason I think the kids are taking drugs is because they're so much cheaper than the legal products available. I mean, who's going to go to a music festival and drink beers all day or drink spirits all day? Because it's hideously expensive. But they'll find someone in there who'll sell them a pill for $30 and that'll be their day's worth of entertainment. And a lot of that comes down to the government, who now says, well, we must have pill testing to keep the kids safe. Well, if you didn't tax up the wazoo the product that you've deemed to be safe enough for them to legally use in the first place, maybe they wouldn't be taking the illegal one.